Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are here on the third call of the second day with Transforming Community from the Inside Out Global Telesummit. And this is our fifth Global Telesummit. So in this year, the theme is Community Begins With You. So my name is Sheila Mazan, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here and be hosting for the 5 days. We've got 4 days left. You might know that after 3 days, it wasn't 3 days, actually it was 3 years of producing and organising the Telesummit. It was back in 2016 when the Centre for Sustainable Change, a not-for-profit organisation, just in case you don't realise that, they took over the whole thing and they invited me back to host again this year. So I'm really, really grateful for that. So I did wonder today, I thought it might be interesting and helpful to know a little bit about Centre for Sustainable Change, CSC for short, or their mission more, should I say. So I thought it'd be a good idea to just share that with you and maybe give you an insight as to why they organise this Telesummit every year. So their mission is to establish and support a collaborative worldwide network of individuals and groups who are introducing the understanding of mind, consciousness and thought via locally led community change initiatives. So if you'd like to find out more about CSC and be kept up to date with the newest and latest activities, then please sign up for their newsletter at the website centreforsustainablechange.org. You'll find out more about what they're doing regarding community development throughout the 3 principles world. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you officially to Sherry Gillings and Jonelle Sims, and they're going to be sharing on this session's topic of anything is possible. So just to give you a little taste of Sherry, I've taken a little bit from her bio. Sherry Gillings has been working with personal and organisational change in addiction and recovery treatment since 2003. She's a qualified counsellor, clinical hypnotherapist and coach. Now, I personally connected with Sherry last year when she initiated an idea about the listing posts for Mental Health Awareness Week. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that today, maybe a lot, I don't know, we'll see. That's where I got to know Sherry. Then Jonelle has worked for a global corporation for 25 years in various roles, from sales to training to organisational development. And she left the corporate world to focus primarily on community. And this change came after gaining a profound insight into the nature of mind, consciousness and thought, where she realised the source of all human suffering. And you can, of course, you can read much more about all our speakers on the website. So if you want to find out more, you click onto the website and you'll see the full bios there. So ladies, thank you for your patience. Jonelle and Sherry, great to have you here. And Jonelle, I got to know a little bit, well, both of you I got to know a little bit on our pre-meeting, our pre-conversation. So I'm really excited to dig into the topic today, anything's possible. So I don't know who we're going to start with. It's funny, we had all ladies so far, because we can't even say ladies first. So I just realised yesterday was all ladies, today, right now, is all ladies. So I always like to start these sessions with finding out a little bit of background, even though I know I've read the official pieces, but really so people can get a sense of who you are and where you've come from, why you're here on this call. So let's go for Jonelle, because she's looking at me on the screen right now.
Well, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be able to be here. So such a pleasure. My background is in learning and employee development. I worked in the travel industry for about 30 years, but the last 20 years supporting the travel industry in employee development. And so I did a lot of training and took all sorts of stuff. And after I had my experience with the 3 principles, coming across them and kind of discovering the source of all of my suffering that I've had throughout the years, I decided to try to bring it into my work, and I was able to do it. But I realized, based on an experience I had when I had my awakening, that I really wanted to work in community. And so that's what led me to leaving the corporate world and right now doing a fair amount of work for a local homeless shelter. So that's kind of where my background comes from.
Cool, thank you. That's nice and brief, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll dig into a lot more soon, I'm sure. Yeah. So Sherry, how about you?
My background really is in substance misuse field. And I'm really saying that really that's my professional background. And yeah, I've been doing that since 2003, came across the principles in 2014, actually, September 2014. Michael Behan, he's coming to speak maybe tomorrow, I think.
That's right after this one.
Right after, okay, later. So Michael Behan lent me this book called The Serenity Principle by Joseph Bailey. And at the time, I had no idea that that book was about the 3 principles. That is not what I got from the book. What I took away from that book was that stress was a internally created condition, not a response to external circumstances. And I was like, wow. So a few pages in, I booked my driving lessons, which I've been wanting to do for many, many, many years. And I decided I was going to leave an abusive marriage. And within 6 months, I passed my test and left an abusive marriage as well. And wow. Which was just like, you know, when you track back and go, yeah, that book. It's a good book. And then I started going to Chat Club maybe. And I just went once or twice. And I was just like, yeah, you know what? This stuff just made so much sense to me. And it made sense of an earlier experience that I had way back then. And I was just like, you know, there was a time when I absolutely knew that and absolutely live from that place of spirit. That's what we are. That's who we are. And yeah, it just made a lot of sense to me. That was it, really. Just carried on looking in this direction. That's what I've been doing. Just keep looking in this direction.
Wow. Well, that's really interesting to hear both your stories. Like when you Sherry, there were real life-changing things then that happened to you, real transformational moments, and then you now talk about awakening. To me, that sounds pretty transformational too.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't an insight. It was a 3-day period of, I guess, looking through the eyes of God is the best description that I can use it today. I suffered with insecure thought, which is the best way I could describe it now. If anything, before I would have described it as depression. I was perfectly fine most of the time working or with friends or with people, but when I got alone and in my head, I would suffer. And I would listen to the thoughts about myself, about that I wasn't doing enough or I was broken in some way, and I couldn't overcome all these things that I thought were wrong with me. And that started when I was really young. And in my 20s, I came across self-help. And I was reading in the newspaper one day about the top 10 books, and one of the books was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that was my first introduction to, oh, there's something that I can do to kind of overcome this brokenness that I have. And so it became an addiction, trying to find the answers to fix me, to overcome my brokenness, to be able to do the things that I thought I should be doing. And I did that for about 25 years. And I discovered that it really wasn't helping me. I'd try and do it for a while, and then it wouldn't work. I wouldn't stick with it. And because I didn't stick with it, it was just more proof of my brokenness and something was wrong with me. Because everything in the book says that if you just follow this, you're supposed to, to be able to fix yourself. So I just got really fed up and I gave up looking. And I realized I had some sort of a small insight that was, I've lived all my life with this brokenness and I've been perfectly fine. And I've gotten through life, so I'm just going to have to accept it. So I did that. And I just decided I'm not going to do self-help anymore. I'm just going to have to live as I am broken. I'm functioning perfectly fine anyway, even if I feel crappy. And I think there's something to that where I gave up searching and I just kind of accepted my brokenness. And I think it allowed me to drop a lot of thinking and to be open to see something new that I had never seen before. So instead of actively trying to search and fix and change, I was open to seeing something new. And they say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so one day I came across or heard something about the Pranskys, and I Googled their name and went on to the Three Principles Movies site. And I watched about an hour of videos. So this is the first time I'd heard about the principles. So I watched George and Linda, and eventually I got to Jack Pransky. And in the video that he has on there, he said, how can we take ourselves seriously in light of the fact that we're making it all up? And that just didn't hit me here. It hit me in my body. And I had a visceral physical experience where it felt like 200 pounds of weight just lifted off of me. And I realized, oh my God, every single thought I've ever had in my entire life has been completely made up. I realized I was living in an illusion of thought, and that everything in my experience was created from that. I had thinking and I believed it. And so it became my experience. And I guess because of that, I ended up just spending 3 days in this experience of being inside of myself, but also being able to look outside of myself as if I'm watching myself on a stage, or I kind of think it in a snow globe. So I'm walking around outside, looking at myself inside the snow globe. I could watch the world. But I was doing it from a sense of feeling of the unconditional and impersonal. It was a level of love I had never experienced before in my life. I had had experiences of love with my family and with my friends and colleagues, but I'd never had this kind of love before. And it was really strange because it wasn't personal. It was completely impersonal, and it just seemed completely different than any other kind of love I'd had before. But hundreds and hundreds of times the depth of it. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was bad. Nothing was broken. Everything was perfect. There was no judgment on anything. And so for those 3 days, I was just walking around. I call it my Eckhart Tolle moment. I was just walking around with this profound understanding of the truth of life. Oh, and so I realized, oh, this is God. This feeling of the unconditional and the impersonal. This is God. This is what I am, what everyone is. And at the time that I had that experience, I'd been having some challenges with some next door neighbors who were dealing with drug addiction and alcoholism and just all sorts of awful suffering. And initially, they caused me a lot of fear. And we were almost going to move out of our home because the situation was so bad. And when I had this insight, I went from thinking that they were other or less in some way to realizing, oh my God, they're exactly like me, exactly like me. They're just having this flow of thought coming through them, thinking it's real and acting out on it. So that accounts for all their addictions. They just want to feel better, you know, and all their behaviors, they're just believing it and acting out on it. So when I had that experience with them and went from being completely fearful and seeing them as less and separate to realizing they were me, they were exactly like me, I knew that's kind of one of the, you know, the big insights that had me go in the direction of working with community, because I see all this suffering everywhere. You know, every person I run into has their own brand of craziness, I call it, their go-to crazy, you know. And so that's kind of what led me to that. It was just this profound 3 days of seeing life through the unconditional and impersonal and realizing there was something that I never knew existed before. And now that I know that's true, I live through that. Even though I don't feel it all the time, most of the time I don't. I feel more human than ethereal, but I know the truth of it.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, thank you for sharing that, Janelle. That, I mean, it's a I was going to say it's a very personal story, but actually we've just been talking about how impersonal it was. So it's yeah, really, really, really loved hearing that story. Thank you. And you come back to ask you a bit more about the work that you've been doing, because that's what we're here for, to hear about. Well, you've given a really nice description as well of the principles. So if anybody's listening that doesn't know what the principles are, kind of that's what it's exactly what Jonelle's been talking about. The principles pointing to that experience, that understanding. So yeah, if I can jump over to you now, Sherry. I mentioned at the beginning about the listening posts. So is that a good place for us to kind of dig in, kind of start talking about that in terms of this title of your session, Anything's Possible? Because to me, that really speaks to that, about the anything's possible piece. So do you want to just give us the story about that? Because obviously I was kind of on a little tiny part of that last year.
Yeah, so I joined the Ninja Coaches, Dave Kibbe's Ninja Coaches page on Facebook, the Facebook group. And it was the end of April, and he was asking a question about Mental Health Awareness Week and what could we do as people who had an inside-out understanding and understand the inside-out nature of life. What could we offer during Mental Health Awareness Week? And I looked at the question. I thought, what could we do? And then just the idea came, yeah, we could do this. We could do listening posts. So I began typing, we could do listening posts. Basically, inside out coaches, facilitators, what have you, could rock up in public places, museums, parks, coffee shops, and what have you. And we could listen. And we could listen from a place of well-being for other people, for their well-being, we could do that. And then, and I've said this, and then we could do that, and then the next time round, what we'll do is we train people so they've got an inside-out understanding, and they can do listening posts everywhere, wherever they are. Just kind of put it on the page like that. Anyway, Dave came back and said that's genius or something like that, and I cried because it was like, no, I didn't really think it was that. You don't see it, but someone else sees it, and I was really moved by just this comment. I don't really think of myself in that way, so it was nice to kind of try that on for a minute. It was quite moved by it, and then someone else said, yeah, so let's get some t-shirts. So I think that was on the Thursday. And then on the Friday and the Saturday, I bought the WordPress thing, made the website, did the Facebook page, did so much stuff very, very quickly, so that very quickly it began something. And then on the Sunday, Dave Kibbe and I did this Facebook Live, and it was watched by, I don't know, thousands of people or something. And yeah, within a couple of weeks, there was 50 odd coaches had gotten on board and delivered these listening posts in different places across the city and different parts of the world. And it seemed to really catch light because it's such a simple idea. And the point of it really is that, like, when you're connected to yourself, when you're connected to your own well-being, it's much easier to hear somebody else's well-being, even when they're describing some pretty dreadful stuff. And yeah, so that's how it happened. That's what happened. And then we did listening posts. We did them all over the place. Then we came together in London at the end of kind of Mental Health Awareness Week. And then there was World Mental Health Day in October. So we did something for that as well. Got some people on board for that. We've done a couple more listening posts around the West Midlands, Leamington, the Peace Festival, and the Gay Pride we did in Leamington as well. And then I applied for a bit of funding through Unlimited to see whether they would fund the pilot for a couple of sessions that we can train some people. So we can do some 2 short listen for wellbeing programs, basically, which would really be about introducing the inside-out understanding and letting some people get some practice around listening. But people know what it is to listen. That's the other thing about it. People know what it is to listen. They've experienced being listened to really well. They know the difference between somebody who's paid quality attention to them and somebody who's just kind of nodding their head and agreeing, you know, kind of pushing them aside. And but yeah, so just to kind of focus on that. So I have a pharmacist in Dudley who's on an estate in Dudley, which is known to be a rundown estate. But she's got this community pharmacy. She did a listening post at the pharmacy that went really well, and she's done a couple of things since then. So we're going to run a Listen for Wellbeing project there, just to see what happens. And the other place where we like to run it, but I don't know if I can pull it off, is up in Middlesbrough, where Julian Freeman is, and the guys up there with the what's it called? There's a community centre up there.
They're speaking tomorrow, funnily enough.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, so that's the other place where we want to get that to happen. Just because they were so connected and so on board with it last year, and it just you know, the northeast of the country is quite dear to me. It's another place where there's statistically a lot of problems, but actually, you know what, a real resourceful and resilient people. You know, it's like, it would be beautiful to get it up there as well. So 2 places for definite. And we've had a support from Telford to deliver. There's an aftercare project there, a recovery aftercare team, and yeah, they've agreed that we can hold the project there as well. So, you know, the funding is really about some materials like T-shirts, banners, you know, marketing materials. It's not like funding for time. It's just some equipment really, and it comes out over 4 phases and what have you. So it's been a really long, slow process to even get to that point, and I feel like it feels like there was so much energy around the listening post for a while, and then it all kind of fizzled away, and I went back to work, and but it hasn't gone away. It's just, you know, things ebb and flow, don't they? And you know, there's a bit of an egg right now.
Yeah. Well, I love that, Sherry. I had I didn't really have an inkling of, until I spoke to you recently, that you'd got funding and it was becoming more of a thing, I suppose, you know. And what I really love about this is that you came up with that idea just off the top, sort of from a clear mind, I suppose. I was going to say off the top of your head, but that's a saying, isn't it? That you were no real thinking about it. But within a couple of days, I remember all that activity on Facebook. You know, I remember it and just following it, because then I said, I'm going to do one in Spain, and I did do one, you know, and it was like, people felt like they wanted to join in. There was a momentum to it. But the point is, it was an idea that you put it out there, and people just picked up on it, and it had a life. It was like had this life of its own. That's fabulous. And the repercussions are that now you've got funding, and it's spreading through the UK, and who knows what's happening around the world. I mean, just because we haven't heard doesn't mean that other people aren't doing other things in other countries. Yes. This is that, right? They can just get on with their own. Yes. And this is the beauty of, you know, really remembering anything is possible. Anything is possible. I love it. So if people are if somebody's out there right now, Sherry, with an idea, what would you say to them?
Test it out. The best thing that you can do with any idea that you have is absolutely test it out. Absolutely. I think when we had our pre-conversation, I said to you that I've just started in a new role, and it's in the recovery sector again, and it's a group work program. And at the time of taking on the role, I had no sense at all that I could absolutely do this thing. Even though I've been working in the sector for years and doing a lot of, so much one-to-one work, I didn't have the sense that I could create and deliver an 8-week recovery program. You know what? I absolutely have. I absolutely have. We don't talk about the principles, but we're talking about inside out all the time. Yeah, it's absolutely, like, I'm astounded by we have an idea, let's test it out, and then you just work with the feedback and another idea when you test it out. Yeah, I just think that's amazing. I think that's, for me, that's God. That's the God incidences, It's like the spark comes and you just try it out without being so caught up in it. Without being so caught up in the outcome, because it's going to be okay anyway. And so earlier on in the year, I began to get a little bit concerned about this whole work situation. And I have this thing where I'm a dot joiner. That's one of the things that I do, joining dots, joining dots.
You want to say that again?
Joining dots.
Oh,
yeah,
joining.
Yeah. And I was walking down the road one day and I was praying, you know, and I'm saying, God, I don't know why you've given me this joining the dots thing. Like, what benefit is that going to do? How is that going to be beneficial? You know, what can I do in the world with that? And maybe, I don't know, a little further while down the road, I just had this thought that was, you know, if nobody joined the dots with the stars, nobody would see the constellations. And I was like, oh, okay. Because that's it. We can join the dots in hindsight. We can look back and we know this was the reason for everything working out. And we can look back and see that. But what the information that gives me in the moment is that I can trust this moment. I don't have to do anything else with this moment. I can trust it. You know, in 6 months, in a year's time, I'll look back and now it will have all made sense. So I don't need it to make sense right now. In this moment, I can just trust it. You know?
That's a beautiful, beautiful insight, right? That really is. Thanks, Sherry, for sharing. That's really inspiring. I love it, love it, love it. So, Jonelle, do you say Jonelle or Jonelle?
Jonelle. My mother's English.
Oh yeah, Jonelle. Right, okay. So, Jonelle, you have been doing lots of different things in for community, in community. And I know one of the things we talked about is the homeless shelter. So I'd love to hear, I'd love for you to share, because I've heard a little bit about it. I'd love you to share for people that are watching what it is that you're doing at homeless shelter. How did that come about? What that you're doing? What are the results?
Cool. Well, it was because of the situation that happened next door, where I went from being very afraid and feeling very separate from people who were suffering to seeing that they were exactly like me, that I knew that that's where I wanted to work and support in some way. So because my background is in training and development, I can just do a workshop. I've done thousands of them, you know, so I thought, oh, I'll just do a workshop. And I thought I would maybe check out with the local homeless shelter. So literally, I just made one phone call or sent one email, I can't remember. And I got a reply back. And basically, I just said, listen, I'm interested in delivering a workshop to the clients at the homeless shelter. This is my background, and this is where I think I can help. And the person brought me down and had a meeting with them. And it just happened to be that at that time, they were looking for things for people in the homeless shelter to do, because quite often they come in there for their meals, but then they're just sitting there doing nothing. So they wanted to commit some of their resources to being able to give them something to do. So it was just like a no-brainer. And the funny thing is the person I was talking to, the volunteer coordinator, I don't think he had any idea what I was talking about. You know, you can see that they're not resonating with it, but I guess because just the way we come across with it, so confident that, oh, okay, come in and start talking to people. So I started doing this weekly workshop, and I just put out a flyer and announced that I was going to be there at a particular time for a couple of hours. And the first one that I did was a bit of a disaster because the classroom wasn't available. There was some sort of mix up in my booking. And so I did it in kind of an open area. And there was a bunch of classroom groups coming through that were being toured. So there's all this noise and everything went really bad. But I've had a lot of bad stuff happen in training before, you know, where buildings under construction or posts in the way or whatever. So it wasn't that unusual for me to have that experience, but it was, you know, my first time trying to explain the unexplainable, and that's a whole nother thing altogether. So I thought I would, after I did the first one, I thought, oh, well, I got through it. I'll try another one. So I figured I'd do about 3. And then I got to my 3, and then I think I'll just keep going. So it's been about 120 of them now. And it's really not like a workshop. I changed the name of it to a hangout. And a lot of them that come into the hangouts are, they have lots of physical and mental disabilities. And a lot of them can't communicate very well. And it's very hard to understand a lot of them. And if they don't come in with a lot of those kinds of challenges, a lot of times they come in with a lot of attitude because they're caught up in a lot of thinking. So I find that I don't intentionally spend a lot of time sharing the principles because it just doesn't go anywhere. I'm mostly just there to listen to them. You know, it is kind of like listening posts. That's really what I'm doing. And I find that if I can just make some sort of connection with them and feel a little love for them, and I can see them kind of calm down a bit, or their thinking slows down a bit, or I'll see little signs, you know, and they'll go in and out of it. You know, I'll see them calm down and then they get revved up again, you know, but that's all I'm ever looking for. And lots of them come in and I never see them again, but every once in a while, you know, I get one that I get a little breakthrough with. And I also was very lucky to get a lot of donations of Sydney Banks books. So if I think someone is hearing something, then I'll try to give them a book and see if they'll take it away. And I've probably actually had more success just giving out the books than telling anything that I have to say, I think. But I think just, you know, what I see from them, and that I know they're perfectly fine underneath. I know they can see what I can see. They just have to see it. The other thing is I'm not in charge of getting them to see it, and I have no idea when or how that happens. You know, it could happen after they walk out. I have no idea. So it's been a really, really good experience for me to let go of expectations. You know, I don't get to see a lot of them over again, but I've got a few that come back in every once in a while. And yeah, so that's been the experience. It's just hanging out, listening. I find, if anything, mostly what I'm doing is just pointing out what their wisdom is. What I see is their wisdom, you know, where they're making choices. Even to come to the homeless shelter is a wise decision. You know, when they need food, they come and get it. So I spend a lot of time doing that rather than kind of directly sharing what the principles are.
That's interesting, really interesting to, you know, you went in thinking you were going to do a workshop and now it's much more. Do you I think the question just popped in and said, do you think you learn as much from them as they do from you? Or
that is
the learning is there, or pick up from this?
That's really the way I see it now. I don't see myself as the teacher for them. I see them as the teacher for me. I realize I have so much to learn about sharing this, and so much to learn about getting out of my head and getting out of my ego and getting out of my needs and my expectations and all of that. And every day I go in there, it's teaching me again. You know, every once in a while someone will say something and it just blows me away. You know, they have an insight and it profoundly affects me. And one of the insights that a participant shared, he didn't talk at all during the session. He just kind of had his head down and he had dark glasses and a hat on. He was just kind of listening there. And I don't even know if he was listening, but all of a sudden, after we'd been talking for about 45 minutes with a group of two or three other people, he lifted his head up and he said, I just realized I've been a teacher all my life. I even taught my mother how to be a good mother. And that really, really touched me profoundly, because I saw, oh my God, we're all teachers all the time. Even as an infant, we are teachers, you know. We are teachers for everyone in every moment. In the worst of my behaviors and the best of my behaviors, I'm a teacher. And so it kind of takes off the pressure of doing this right or doing it well. And it's not that I don't get caught up in it. I do all the time. Oh, I'm not good enough. I can't explain it like Elsie Spittle or Dick and Bettinger, Michael Neal. They're all way better than me. I go there all the time. But I keep on waking up and I keep on remembering anybody can hear truth any moment. And it doesn't really matter how or when I say it. When they're ready to hear it, they'll hear it. Mm-hmm. And so I just have to keep showing up. And actually, I don't even have to do that, but I do. You know? But yeah.
Yeah. So we're all teachers and we're all students, right? At the same
all the
time.
time.
Because I remember hearing Sydney Banks say, you know, you can hear wisdom from the checkout girl in the supermarket. You know, it's Absolutely. Not, you know, you don't have to go to a guru to hear truth. It's all around us all the time, whether we've got ears and eyes for it. I guess that's the secret. It is a secret at all, and I don't think we could even choose that, can we? So
no, I know it's a mystery.
It is, isn't it? Thanks, Janelle, for sharing about that. I'm going to ask you a little bit about something a bit different in a minute, but I'm going to go back to Sherry and hear a little bit more about Sherry about this going, because we talked about this as well before, about going, you know, you were out of work. Mm-hmm. And this is again under the banner of Anything's Possible. So you were asked, do you want to just tell the story about you were asked to do this job? And
yeah, I was made redundant earlier on in the year, or my role was made redundant, let me say that way. And it kind of like, fortunately, I think because this understanding, like I was able to respond to it kind of usefully, and I was able to kind of push some things and play with some things and kind of make some stuff. But at some point, I had to go back to work and I needed to find some work. And
Sherry, just can you just slow down a little bit? I mean, I'm English and I understand you pretty well, but I think some people who are listening might not, and it sounds a little bit muffled on your end. So if you just slow down slightly, that would be really helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I got a call from a friend who said somebody was they needed somebody to stand in a role. Could I come and have a conversation with them about that? So I came along and had a conversation. And while I was talking about some of the stuff that I did and could do, the chap said, you know, I think you'd be really good leading our recovery academy. I was like, tell me a little bit more about leading the recovery academy. And he said, oh, it's an 8-week recovery based program. It's 12-step background. And listening to what you're saying, I think you'd be really, really, you know, I think that would be the best fit. And I remember going, oh, okay. And him saying to me, you know, they were going to speak to somebody else who was going to come to do the one-to-one recovery coaching. And so we get back to him at the end of the day, which he did. And he came back and he said, you know, we've put someone else in the recovery coaching, but I really wanted to come to this academy. And I think, you know, I think you'd be great at it. Can you give us 12 weeks? So I said, yes. And started work the following Monday. And having not done that type of kind of group program before. And, but you know, when something just has a sense of, this is going to be all right. And, you know, when people used to talk about grounding, like how sure are you of what you have? And go from that. So I could look at that. I could look at my own recovery journey. I'm 19 years drug-free this year. I don't drink alcohol either anymore, so I used to do occasionally and don't do that either. Think, okay, I've got this background in therapeutic insight, counselling, therapy, etc., what have you. But what's really useful is knowing that I am not the victim to my circumstances or the situation or to people or places or things. No. And when you look at the 12 steps and the kind of the whole 12-step background, and you know, one of the key kind of messages within that is that you know, the point of it is to have a spiritual awakening that you can then go and pass on. And for me, coming to understand that I'm not at effect. I'm not victim to people, places, and things. Really, truly, I'm not. was huge. So I went into the academy on that basis, and actually, because I know I am not at effect, I know that nobody else in the room is at effect either, and nobody's victim to anything, and there's only a misunderstanding that tells us that we are. That makes it, I don't know if we can. So that's the place that we work from, and we do still look at the 12 steps. We still look at, you know, being powerless in our addiction, and actually, oh, this is beautiful as well. So we look at step 1, of course, being powerless over our addiction. But step 2 is about coming to believe that power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. What we talk about, where does that power greater than yourself reside? Is it an external thing? It's like, clearly not. It must be within. And we talk about, you know, you can't heal the cut on your hand, and yet the cut on your hand heals. I asked the guys to have a meditation question that I ask, which is, you know, how many oak trees are in an acorn? And we speak about the abundance that's built into life, this intelligence that's built into life. And we don't talk about the 3 principles, we talk about what is built into life. And if life is running through your veins, if you wake up to the intelligence behind life, then actually coming to believe isn't such a hard thing to do. You know, you begin to see it everywhere, and that's what's been going on. That's what's been going on. It's been amazing. We do some STEP, we do neuroscience, we do kind of, you know, the essential thought, feeling, behavior stuff. But of course, we know, and they know, that it's all generated from within. So we're always responding to the story in our heads as opposed to what's really going on. Wow, this is a language that people in recovery can really understand. You know, people in addiction can really understand. You know, we know that when we, you know, create chaos in our lives with our partners so that we can go and, you know, find an excuse to return to our truth, we know full well there was no chaos in the moment. We made it so we could, you know, go and be about, you know, serving our addiction, if you like. And I just find it's really helpful to not get caught up in the language of mind, consciousness, thought, none of that. But actually to point people towards what's built into life, what's this intelligence behind life, you know, as a place they can always look. Always look. We have some mindfulness practice. And, you know, there's lots of ways that people can slow their thinking down, they can slow their busy minds down. And I'm not precious about that, you know. Whatever creates space, pause between the thoughts, enough for people to see and recognize and see that for themselves is the beginning of, you know. We had a gender group today, and, you know, when one of the women was giving some feedback, and she said, you know, I've realized this thing. And I said to her, because that's where all change comes from you realizing it. Like, we could tell you X, Y, and Z, but it makes no difference. You're seeing that is the most powerful thing. That's the gift, you know, in the space for you today. And it's really, really true. Her seeing it for herself, realizing that she had a response to something that wasn't, you know, the situation wasn't as she thought it was, and she responded to that. It's light bulb moments. That's way more powerful than kind of giving people tons of information, and, you know, it's huge. Huge. So, yeah, anything's possible. And, you know, there's a preacher in the UK many, many years ago, and he used to have this as his strapline. He used to say, anything's possible, only believe. And so when I saw that was the title of our conversation today, I was just like, oh man, it's just so fits. You know, I buy that story that anything is possible. I do buy it. And I think that the only believing is that sense of, you know, whatever we are believing, we'll bring about, you know, it happens that way. But the power to realize that you don't have to believe every thought that comes along. It's huge. Huge.
That is huge, isn't it? We don't have to believe everything that comes along. Yeah. Kind of the only thing's possible reminds me of, you know, Michael Neill's latest book, Creating the Impossible, which I've started reading. Just love the to me, there's a spaciousness that keeps coming up as I'm reading it. It's like, oh yeah. And when you just said about anything's possible, just believe, or only believe, only believe. That belief, the beliefs can limit us so much, can't they? That's what I'm seeing over and over again. So this anything's possible is really about maybe questioning the beliefs that we have, that it's not, basically. You know, if I have an idea and it's like, yeah, but, oh no, and before we know it, we've shut ourselves down and not even tried.
Yes.
Not even tried.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Janelle was talking about giving books away. So I use Audible, and that's how I give books to people. So I often give Michael Neill's book away, or Michael Singer, or even the Big Book of Little Change, Little Book of Big Change, because you know, I think like Janelle, really, we're working with people who don't maybe have a lot of resources, but you know, a free book that kind of allows them to go and explore for themselves something of what we're sharing. It's a great tool, and you can always give a book away on Audible. I love it. Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Great tool.
Thanks, Sherry. There's a couple of comments coming versus questions I'd love to read out to you. Because, so Mandy, who was on yesterday, said, so inspiring, both of you, and can feel the passion you feel and the belief you have in everyone you meet. So that's Mandy. And then Patty, who was here with us yesterday as well, says, Jonelle was my inspiration for creating workshops at the homeless shelter near me. She just said, go for it.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Mandy and Patty, for sharing. So Janelle, and thanks, Sherry. That was beautiful what you shared. Thank you, Janelle. As well as the homeless shelters, there are other ways that you are going with anything's possible. I know I came across you on Facebook, I believe, years ago. I'm saying years, probably 2 years ago, something like that. Would I be right with seeing these memes, and some people call them memes, some people call them memes. Probably just me that calls them memes. Everybody else calls them memes. Yeah. But the boxes on Facebook that say, "Has it ever occurred?" Is that the one? Has it ever occurred to you? Have you ever? Even you forgot now.
Have you ever noticed?
Have you ever noticed? That's it. I think somebody else did. Have you? Yeah. Have you ever noticed? And there was like one every day or something. Mm-hmm. And I think you created a lot of those. That was one of the things I remember about you. And then the other thing is the three pre-procrastination publications. And I always thought, that's such an odd name. So I'd love you to, that's me being honest. I thought, that's a very odd name. What's that about? I'll have to meet this Jonelle and find out. And here we are. So I'd love you to share how that came about. And, because you're sharing that for all of us. Publicly, so that we can read and find the resources. So yeah, go for it.
Well, my background of training and development, I used to write a lot of curriculum. So I would do research and develop content, and then I worked a lot with Word and PowerPoint and Excel. And a lot of times you could get creative with it, and I really enjoyed creating with PowerPoint. And so when I came across the principles, I just had the thought one day, because part of what I learned was really powerful when I was training was asking questions. Instead of telling people things, it was kind of asking things for them to discover for themselves in some way. And so I realized the power of questions. And I thought, I wonder if you could just ask a series of questions that would get people to understand the principles or get insight into the principles. And so that's where the little memes started. I worked with PowerPoint and some graphics, and I just came up with kind of 3 templates. And I just started coming up with a series of questions. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to post them on Facebook. I'm going to do 365 of them for a year and see if I can just create a bunch of questions. So that's what I did. And I have absolutely no idea if they're working or not, but it doesn't make any difference because that's just another thing of, it's just my expectations, you know, I need to, whatever it is. The thing is I like doing them. That's all I need to do, you know? And I know originally someone came to me and said, oh, you should make these into a book, or you should make them into some sort of an app that would come up every day, you know? And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And now actually when I look back on them, I go, oh, I'm not so crazy about some of them because my understanding of the principles has evolved. You know? So some of the questions I had at the beginning I think are kind of erroneously pointing in the wrong direction. So I don't know what I'll do with them. I've got, I think, about 380 of them now. And I just, whatever occurs to me, I'll put it as a question and I post it. And I have no idea, but I enjoy doing them. So then the other thing is my website. So when I said that I suffered a lot when I was younger, it was because I believe that I didn't finish anything, and that I didn't have the grit to be able to, you know, start something and finish it. And it was probably from something my mother said to me at some point, and I believed it. And from there, that point in my life, I just noticed that everything I finished, I didn't pay any attention to. And everything that I didn't finish, I made significant and meaningful. And so I just believed I was broken in some way. I had this idea that I was a huge procrastinator and always left things until the last minute. And I didn't see all the stuff that I did good. I just noticed all the stuff that I did bad, but it became a part of my persona. And what I grew up with a bit is that I've got a fairly good sense of humor. And so anything that I had a way of dealing with it was making fun out of it, you know, kind of teasing. And so I never used to send Christmas cards or birthday cards on time. They were always late. And so it got to be a big joke in the family. And so I decided to create a Christmas newsletter one year. And of course, that probably didn't get delivered most of the time on time either. But when I created the newsletter, I thought, I'm going to call it Procrastination Publications, the news you can wait for. And so I did that for about 10 or 15 years. And when I wanted to share my experience of my enlightenment with my family, I couldn't fit it into the newsletter. It was too long of a story. And so I thought, well, I'll just put it in a website. And that's the name of the website, Procrastination Publications, because it was the name of the publishing company that made the newsletter. So it's just an inside joke for Janelle, but just reflects me. So that's where that came from. And my story that I gave to my family is what's published on the main page. And it has grown huge since then. Mm-hmm. So I started collecting resources for the 3 principles. And I thought, oh, well, I'm collecting for themselves. Why not just put them on the website and then they're available to everybody else? And since 2013, our industry has grown hugely. There's so many people sharing the 3 principles, and there's so many free resources out there. All my resources listed together create, I converted the 2 pages that I have of resources. It's like a 92-page document now, full of free 3P resources that are available to everybody. So.
Brilliant. I love that story though. It wasn't like you set out to do anything for anybody else, but well, your family, obviously, in a way. And then we've got this wonderful resource now that we can go and find. Do you want to just say it out loud? What the URL is?
Oh, it's www.procrastinationpublications.com. Yeah, and you know it's funny. I was terrified of sharing that story. I was very insecure about sharing what my background was, and I had all sorts of thinking about it.
Really?
But I think that's something that you eventually discover with the 3 principles, is that you just start sharing, and then after a while it doesn't bother you anymore, you know? But I also know that there's kind of something to the fact that it's almost like everything I do, there's always this, oh my God, I can't believe I shared that, or oh my God, I can't believe, you know. And if that happens, I kind of know I'm heading in the right direction, you know.
I've heard that described as a vulnerability hangover or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, that's a good sign now.
Yeah. It just means that I'm venturing into the craziness of my thinking, and that's okay.
Wonderful. We haven't got any questions yet. So is there anything else that you'd like to share that's top of mind that you think would be really helpful to people that are listening? In terms of our two topics, I suppose, community begins within you and anything's possible. Like, I suppose I'm thinking from a perspective of encouraging people in terms of anything's possible. I mean, I know I asked you that question, Sherry, about your answer was test it. Just if you've got an idea, just go out and test it. And I think that's a brilliant piece of advice, though we don't usually give advice, but I just think that makes a lot of sense in terms of experiment. Throw stuff out there, see what happens. Back to our next session is called sowing seeds. That's how I feel about it. It's like throw some seeds out there and see what happens.
Yes. You know, something that comes to mind is, when people ask me about the academy, and I'm talking to the folks coming through the academy, I tell them that, you know, the mission in the academy isn't to make people feel better. It's not about making them feel positive. Like, so when you said that, when I hear the phrase anything is possible, and we think about, you know, community starts with me, and I think about, you know, the common union with myself, all aspects of me. I have good points, bad points, strengths, weaknesses, all of that. Like, can I be in union with myself? You know, and can I be okay with can I accept my ups, my downs, my highs, my lows? Can I do that? And the more comfortable I get in being uncomfortable, not needing to fix what's uncomfortable in a moment. For me, that's the thing that I see in the resilience, you know, is that I can't. Yeah, that's what I keep pointing people to, is that actually the more comfortable they become with being uncomfortable, the more acceptance they offer to themselves, you know, even to their histories. That's what I see a lot of, is that, you know, we have difficult, painful histories, and we try and, you know, box them off, or, you know, push them away from ourselves. We can't integrate the experience. And of course, the history, we can argue, no longer exists, that the past is no longer present. But of course, you know, there's some evidence that talks about, you know, what's present actually within our bodies, and cellular memory, stuff like that. And it's like, actually, we can change our relationship to the past in this moment. So even knowing that we've had stuff happen that hasn't been wonderful, even knowing that we've had difficult experiences, how we be with that in the moment, you know, is huge. And you know, working in the field that I work in, and I guess it's true for all human beings. That's what I point our people back to as well, is that we're actually, you know, addicts, quote unquote, on our human beings first and foremost, right? Yeah. And you know, being able to give yourself the gift of acceptance is huge, huge. And from that place, then anything really is possible. Because most of what limits us is what we're believing about ourselves in the moment.
No.
What we're believing about our history, what we're believing about our future, what we're believing about what we've heard from other folks. And we view through narrow glasses, you know, through dim glasses. And yeah, so comfortable with being uncomfortable. And accepting without judgment.
Mm. Right, thank you, Sherry, that's helpful. Guess what? There's a question coming for you, Jonelle.
Okay.
Isn't that handy right at the end? So Clesia has sent in a message. Question for Jonelle. My community, in inverted commas, are bankers. So do you have any suggestions in terms of delivering a workshop that would be interesting to this audience? Thanks.
To bankers.
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny. You know, one of the insights that I had was throughout my career working in a large global corporation, I had collected a lot of thoughts about upper management. I was more frontline, and a lot of times I would see a lot of leaders that were probably creating more chaos than they were creating a positive atmosphere for employees to work in. And of course, now I see, oh my God, they're just dealing with their own insecurities. They would come across as confident, but now I see, oh, all these other behaviors was their insecurity coming out in some way. And so one of the insights that I had was that, well, besides the leaders for that, I also had, you know, the top 1%. I had a lot of judgment about them too. But what was really profound was when I had this experience of having very little personal thought and living in the space of the unconditional and impersonal. And I realized how everyone has addictions, including bankers. You know? I realized that, oh my God, everyone who is trying to achieve something, they just want to feel better. So the bankers are no different than my next door neighbors. My next door neighbors, all they did is they feel bad, and the easiest thing for them to do is have a drink or go have a cigarette, or if for a moment it gives them some relief. And what I saw, oh my God, this is everybody. So all these leaders in the company that I'm working for, and all these bankers and all the top 1%, their incessant desire for striving to make more money, to get the next sale, to have the bigger house, to have the bigger car, it's the exact same thing. It's just this insecure flow of thought coming through them. And this makes them feel better. So they're constantly going for that. So I realized, oh my God, if they could only see what I've seen, if they could only understand who and what they are at the core of their being, if they could see through that illusory nature to need to be something other than what they are in that moment, they wouldn't have that need for more. They wouldn't have to go and get those things. They wouldn't have to, you know. Now, how to get them to hear that, I have no idea. but I know it's true. You know, it doesn't matter what the audience is. We are all dealing with the same two things. We don't know who we are at the core of our being. We haven't seen it yet. We haven't glimpsed it yet. We don't know that we are part of this energy, that we're all connected, or we've fallen asleep to it. And we believe the ridiculousness that appears in our head. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it creates suffering, and we do ridiculous stuff to feel better. That's it. Mm-hmm. You see those two things and your life changes. Mm. Yeah. So I don't know if that helped, but.
We'll ask Clesia to chime in the Q&A box. Let us know if that was helpful. And if not, Jonelle can try again. Put you on the spot.
That's okay.
I was just coming up with thinking, well, what would be a really good title for that workshop? Bankers are humans too.
Bankers are humans too.
Might be a bit derogatory to the bankers, I suppose. Okay, so let's see if Clesia comes back to us. That's helpful, she says, thanks. Yeah, that is helpful. Okay, cool. Because I'm just thinking, well, you know, we've still got, according to my clock, we've got 7 minutes left. If there's anything, you know, that you really want to share. And I know what I've been forgetting to do at the end of these sessions is ask if our guests are happy for people to get in touch with them. So that's a yes. I know that your emails are being up on the screen, so you're happy for anybody to get in touch with you in terms of, oh, and Sherry, the listening post URL, do you want to say that one out more? Because I think that's an easy one for people to go and find and actually go off and start doing themselves, isn't it?
Yes, it's www.listenforwellbeing.com. That's www.listenforwellbeing.com.
listenforwellbeing.com. Wonderful. Yeah, because I mean, that was amazing how quickly you got that up and got that going. And I remember, you know, I've seen people out here in Spain with "I'm listening" t-shirt. I'm listening, because that were the t-shirts that you've got. You know, here in Spain, I'm listening. You know, they buy them and they come over, and I think it was at the Viva event actually. I've seen people.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I really would have loved to have come over to Viva, so I'm hoping to get there this year.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, you were talking about bankers and you were talking about sowing seeds and stuff, and before you came to Janelle's question, and I just, you know, bankers understand that stuff. They understand that people think that their well-being is in their money. They know that. That's what they think, right? And
that's what they're banking on.
Yeah. That's what they're thinking. You know, they would also know that you can't sow apples and reap orange trees. Yeah, it's like, okay, so we I think it's quite interesting, really, because we think sometimes that how can we do this with this people, or how can we do it with this people, and it's really funny because addiction is a great leveler. Addiction doesn't care whether you're a banker or whether you've been homeless for 20 years. Yeah, addiction treats you the same way. It's like, and so I think it's really interesting. Then is that there's the similarities piece above and beyond the difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a really important point, isn't it? Yeah.
I think, you know, like right now, there's so much going on that is potentially really divisive, and you know, it's holding both things, isn't it? Holding both things, acknowledging this difference in the value and the beauty of that diversity. You know, the manifold wisdom of God is that, you know, we are multifaceted. Life is multifaceted, and yet we come from the same kind of quantum field. It's like it's the one field, but it's showing up in how many different ways? It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, Birdie's come in and said, "Love what you said, Jonah." That was a while ago, and then she said both of you very, very inspiring ladies. So thank you. So I am going to do my little wrap up, but before I do that, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your time with us, contributing your time. It's been really, really, really interesting and inspiring, as people have said already. So thanks, and I know it's a bit of a rush for you, Sherry, at the end of work, so really appreciate that too.